Commanders hire Dan Quinn to match with their new general manager, Adam Peters, to lead this franchise into the future.
The way that we live is not for everybody, okay? It's not, all right? Because we're going to run and put our bodies on people in a violent manner.
Whether the team is giving us the highest of highs or the bluest of blues, we'll cover it all here on Commanders Nightly News. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So I think I made mention of this in passing. It was a throwaway line a couple of days ago when it first happened. My wife was talking to me, and she asked me, who's Kyle Fuller? I said, Kyle or Kendall? She said, Kyle. I said, he's a cornerback. I said, why do you ask? That's a random name that she doesn't know. So when she brought him up, I said, there has to be a reason or else she wouldn't be asking me about this particular player. She said, well, the Commanders are working him out. I said, man, we're desperate. I said, that's a corner that was good 4 years ago. Probably hasn't played in the league in 2 or 3 years, and he can't help us. So she said, oh, okay. I said, did we sign him? She's like, no, they just worked him out. And of course, they didn't sign him. Now, I come to you 2 days later after they didn't sign him. They've made moves already for the week, and maybe they are going to keep in contact with Kyle Fuller in the event that something happens down the road with, our secondary and they need to call someone. He might be the first guy that they call. Or maybe they saw all they needed to see and said, we're not interested. You're 32 years old. You haven't played in 2 years, and we're good. I only bring this up because me and my guy, Derek B, shout out to my guy, Derek B, we go back and forth all the time in the DMs. And somehow there's this misconception that he has, and maybe some of you share this same misconception, and I want to deaden this right now, if it exists, that I don't want us to make a move. Somehow Derek B is convinced that I don't want us to make a move. I've never said that I don't want us to make a move. I've continuously said there isn't a move that can be made that is going to move the needle enough that you can make at this juncture that is going to fix all that ails this defense, and that isn't going to cost us exponential draft capital, okay? The thing that I've seen with Chef P is he's very calculated. He's not going to give up a tremendous amount of draft capital, risking future assets and future cheap contracts for that matter. That's why you build your team through the draft. Okay? He is not going to be short-sighted enough to give away future picks to try to chase something that isn't really attainable this year. And it's hard for me to say that because I don't know the ceiling of this season, but I am very aware that the ceiling of this season is only as high as the defense will allow it to be. And we can see that the defense isn't going to allow the ceiling to be but so high, right? We can all agree on that. And you're not going to fix this defense with one corner or one edge rusher. It can get better, but there's only so much that you can do, and there's a lot that you're going to have to give up to get a player that's going to make this defense that much better. So my argument hasn't been I don't want to do anything for the sake of this happening organically. I'm not opposed to them trading to go get a guy. I'm opposed to them trading to go get a guy that's not a non-needle mover and having to give up a day 2 pick to do it. And I don't see Chef P doing it. And that's been my argument, is that I don't see him giving up a 3rd round pick or a conditional 4th rounder that could turn into a 3rd round pick, right? Or a conditional 3rd round pick that could turn into a 2nd round pick to go get a guy that can't help this team win a Super Bowl this year. There aren't many guys that are going to be able to come in here and be a number 1 corner for us, which is what we need, that isn't going to cost you at a bare minimum a number 2 pick, a 2nd round pick, probably a 1st. Number 1 corners don't grow on trees. Teams aren't giving those away last time I checked. So I say all of that to say this. The reason Chef P worked out Kyle Fuller is to show that, hey, I'm turning over every stone here. Just in case you didn't think he was working the phones, he's not inquiring about what teams are available, are open for business and what players are available for trade. He's calling guys. He's calling teams. He's checking the pulse of teams like Cleveland and Vegas and Tennessee and Jacksonville. Don't think he's not working the phone, Yeah, hitting up Carolina and teams like that. But guess what? Those teams aren't dumb, and those teams aren't giving away players. These aren't yard sales, right? They're actually going to want something tangible if they're giving away one of their young assets. So, again, it's not that I don't think we should do anything. I just don't see us being able to do anything. We are what we are at this point. I would love to trade for Hassan Reddick, but again, if I'm the Jets, I'm not trading Hassan Reddick. If that stipulation exists in the contract where if he's traded to an NFC team, the Jets have to forfeit a second-round pick to the Eagles. If that, in fact, is in the contract, and we can't confirm nor deny that. I don't trust Josina Anderson, but if that is, in fact, in the contract, I'm not trading him to an NFC team. Sorry, not sorry. Detroit, you can stop calling me. I'm not trading you Hassan Reddick. Washington, you can stop calling me. I'm not trading you Hassan Reddick. Sorry. He's going to have to play for an AFC team if he's going to get traded. If that doesn't exist in the contract and the Jets aren't on the hook for a second-round pick, then that should be something that you should be pursuing. But I trust Chef P, and any move that is made, it's with the best interest in this team first and foremost, at the front and center of any decision that he's making. He's not happy with the way the corners are playing. Obviously, the Kendall Fuller workout tells you that he's not happy and that he's exploring options. You'd be a fool to think he wasn't. But my stance has been and continues to be, he's not giving up future assets. Derek B said to me, he's about attacking success, right? Attacking success. That's the same shit that the head coach of the Los Angeles Rams, right? Sean McVay likes to say, we're attacking success. You know what attacking success looked like for them? You know what it looks like for Derek B and guys like that who want to attack success? Giving up first round and second round picks to chase the Super Bowl. And if you get it, cool, right? The Rams got it. The Rams won't win anything noteworthy for the next 15 years because they gave up too many first round picks in the pursuit of one championship. I'm not trying to win one Super Bowl. I'm trying to win multiple. I'm greedy. We got one of them ones, okay? We got one of them ones. When you have one of them ones, your window is infinitely open until that quarterback is no longer one of them ones. So I'm not looking for just one. I'm not just looking for two. I'm looking for 3, 4 Super Bowls. I'm looking to be dynastic here. The way you do that, because eventually you're going to have to pay him. Probably going to have to re-up on Terry, right? Other guys that are here that are good, just like they did with Sam Cosmi, you're going to have to pay them. They're going to go out here and they're going to sign some free agents. They're going to make this team better this offseason and moving forward. And so if you're going to put yourself in that position, you better be able to draft well and have cheap labor for 4 or 5 years that you don't have to pay massive contracts to. And the only way you're able to do that is by holding on to your draft picks and making smart decisions. Not giving them away to pursue a Super Bowl in a year in which you weren't supposed to be here. And the reason I bring up we weren't supposed to be here is because we're not ready. We're not ready to win a Super Bowl. If we so happen to get to the NFC Championship game or the Super Bowl, great. But things would have to fall in place for that to happen because this defense, as we've all seen, is not ready. And again, some of you say, I knew we were going to be this good. Okay, fine. I'm not going to argue with you. If you thought we were going to be this good, if you thought Jaden Daniels was going to be this good, he was going to transcend the NFL, he's going to set all these records, I'm not going to argue with you, okay? I'm not arguing with you. If you felt like this was going to happen, Derek B contends, I knew this was going to happen. You didn't know this was going to happen. You said that we were going to be good and that we were going to be, Jaden Daniels was going to be really good and that it was going to prompt us to have to do something at the trade deadline. So you were right about that. But you didn't know we were going to be this good. I think you thought he was going to be good enough to where we were competing and not to where we're first place, not to where we look like the best team in this division, right? And you couldn't have known what the other teams in the division were going to do and what they were going to look like. And you couldn't have known that the NFC as a whole was going to look the way that it's looked. Although you probably could have maybe imagined it because the NFC hasn't been that great the last 3 years or so. That said, it's hard for me to fathom that anyone could have imagined he'd be this good, this fast. But at this point, I'm not willing to argue with you. If you say you thought he was going to be this good and we were going to be this good because he was that good, so be it. But the roster is what it is. And if you want to contend they didn't do enough in the offseason, okay, again, I'm not going to argue with you, all right? There weren't many more things they could have done. Could they have been more aggressive here or there? Maybe. But they were pretty aggressive. We turned over 60% of the roster. I don't really know what more you wanted them to do, right? Because you want to keep that cap flexibility. You want to stay in a position that allows you to do the things that you need to do. We're overachieving, and that's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with showing up to the party early, which is what we've done, effectively crashed the party. But it can't expedite you can't fall into the Ronald Rivera trap. That's what you're effectively trying to do, fall into the Ronald Rivera trap. We got a fake-ass division crown in 2020, and Ronald Rivera sped up the timeline because he thought it needed to be sped up based off of a 7-9 division crown. Like, we're not speeding up our timeline because we got one of them ones when we're ahead of schedule already. You're ahead of schedule, let the season play out, right? And then next year, just like the Texans did, you go all in, right? Once you see what you have. The Texans knew as good as C.J. Stroud was, and Jaden's been better to this point, but as good as C.J. Stroud was last year, and up until that point, we had never seen a rookie quarterback come in and do the things C.J. Stroud was doing last year. You don't think the Texans thought to themselves, maybe we should go for it? But guess what? It's not smart to risk the future to go for it now in a season where we know we're not good enough to beat Baltimore, and they weren't. We're not good enough to beat Kansas City, and they're not. And they weren't last year, rather. Not good enough to beat Buffalo. They weren't good enough to beat those teams. And adding a corner or an edge rusher in season wasn't going to change that for them. And they knew that. Let's just play the season out, see what happens, and then next year, we know we got one of them ones, so we can go ahead and go aggressively after it. That's what our situation is going to look like. And I'm not telling you that if an opportunity presents itself, that Chef P won't jump at it, but it's going to have to be the right opportunity. And I told you, I'm all for trading away a day 3 pick to get some help if it makes sense. But I am not willing to trade a day 1 or a day 2 pick to do so. That's not smart business. Not unless you're getting a guy that is young, going into or already in his prime right now, that you're going to be able to keep here for a very long time, that can, like the Bears did with Montez Sweat. Last year, they traded a 2 for Montez Sweat. That's a good deal. His rookie contract was going to be up. They saw a young player entering his prime, and he wasn't part of the future here in Washington. We got something for him. They gave up a 2, and they got themselves a premier pass rusher in their mind's eye. Good for them. That's how you do it. If you're going to get something like that, fine. If it ain't something like that, if it ain't something that you can invest in and keep here long term, we're not the Rams. I'm not mortgaging the future to go get a Von Miller for one season when we're not ready to win a Super Bowl. What sense does that make? I'll give you a 5th round pick for Zadarius Smith. Sure, why not? But Chef P likes his 5th round picks. In case you haven't noticed, he loves his 5th round picks. I'll give you a 7th round pick, but Chef P likes his 7th round picks. Give you a 7th round pick to kick the tie. Roy Harrison, I would have given you a 6th round pick. We don't have one according to many fans. I haven't checked because I don't care about the draft right now. So I'm not clocking our draft picks. I just know that we got an extra 3 because of the Jahan Dotson trade, and I'm not looking to give away any of the top 4 picks that we have. We got 4 picks in the first 2 days of the draft. I'm not looking to give away any of those picks. Neither is Chef P. I do know that. Now, what we got in day 3, I couldn't tell you. Don't know what it looks like back there. But I would have given up a 6th-round pick for Roy Robertson Harris in a heartbeat. Bottom line is, them working out Kyle Fuller is a clear indication that they're not satisfied at corner. Duh. And Chef P's working the phones. But if it don't make sense, it won't get done from a deal standpoint. He's not going to be fleeced. They could have just kept Kendall. All of this could have been rectified. Not that Kendall's this dynamic number one, but he's better than what we have. But I digress. We'll fix that in the offseason. We have what we have, and we got to move forward. And I think Joe Whitt Jr. said some really interesting things at his press conference. So let's go ahead in other news and transition here, where we'll talk about what was said by the coordinators. Both Kliff Kingsbury and Joe Whitt Jr. spoke at the podium today, and we'll get into that. But before we do that, of course, you already know what we got to do. Let's check in on the injury report for both teams heading into Week 7's matchup. Day 2 of the work week took place. Let's see what is going on. We start with the good guys. So our injury report, much like yesterday, is really good. Nothing here is alarming, although there's some names that weren't here yesterday. You can look and see that they're not of real, circumstance, right? For instance, Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner have been added to this list, but both are NIRs, right? Non-injury related. So essentially rest, right? Resting some of your best players. Wagner's elder statesman on the roster. He could use a Thursday off. Why not, right? And Frankie Louvu, rest, right? He's got a little toe. Frankie, take the day off. You're good. We know you about it. You about it. So when you look at the rest of this, though, a lot of FPs, a lot of LPs, not a lot of DMPs. Only one is Dorrance Armstrong. And what did I tell you yesterday? If I'm Joe Whitt Jr., Dan Quinn and company, not to disrespect any opponent, and I hate to be that guy because I told you I don't like the whole we should be able to win without this guy this week. This team's not that good. But this is one of those weeks where you go, you know what? We should be able to take care of business without Dorrance. Right? We'll need him next week against Chicago. Let's let him rest up this week, get himself together, and see what we can do next week. And he might not be ready next week either, but he most certainly doesn't need to play this week against Carolina. And I told you already yesterday, I don't think he's going to play. So we'll see, right? I just don't see the reason for putting him out there if he's compromised at all at this point. When we got a 1-5 team coming to town that we should be able to handle without Dorrance Armstrong Jr., right? Good news, Tyler Owens was able to practice on a limited basis. That's the first time he's been able to practice in over almost 2 weeks, right? So he's trending in the right direction, obviously. And everybody else practiced, right? Everybody else has an LP or FP next to their name. So like I told you yesterday, this is all good. Like, I feel good about our injury report. This is the best I've felt about it probably since like week 2, right? So this looks good. I'm very encouraged. But moving on to the ops. Whew, this is a laundry list. I think the most guys I've ever seen on an injury report was 18. Let's see how many this is, because this is pretty significant here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. 22 guys. That's a new record for me. I've never seen this many names on an injury report before. If we're talking 53-man roster, that's almost half the roster. It's almost half the roster. Now, again, much like us, they've got 2 guys up here that are just strictly up here for rest purposes, who didn't practice on Wednesday, but they practiced on Thursday. So technically speaking, it's really only 20 guys that should be on this list. But still, it's a really long list. I talked about some of the names yesterday that were pretty significant, and we're going to do that again today. There are only a certain amount of names that should stick out to you as guys that are impactful, and we'll go through them quickly. So Troy Hill and Chuba Hubbard, we can remove them from the equation. I said this yesterday because they were non-injury related. DMPs yesterday. They're going to play. They're fine. They were just getting rest. So those two are going to play. Now, when you look at the guys that are impactful that may not play, Jadeveon Clowney, shoulder, didn't practice for the second consecutive day. That's good news for us, right? Because he can impact the game, right? Josie Jewell, impactful linebacker that they got in free agency from the Denver Broncos. Hamstring and groin. Did not practice for the second consecutive day. He is a guy that can impact the game. That is good news for us. This is the biggest one, though, of all of them, because offensively, I'm not really too concerned about defenders impacting the game because I'm that confident in our offense. I'm more concerned about offensive guys for Carolina impacting the game because I don't trust our defense. And so their best offensive weapon right now outside of Chuba Hubbard is Deontay Johnson. And our defensive coordinator, Joe Whitt Jr., spoke about Deontay Johnson, okay? And so him not being able to practice 2 days in a row with an ankle is huge. That's their best weapon. That's the guy that scares me the most. It's not Chuba Hubbard. It's none of the other receivers. Xavier Legette is nice. It ain't Xavier Legette. It's none of the tight ends. It's Deontay Johnson because he's a low-level number one wide receiver in this league, okay? He's a number one. You take him out of the mix and they don't have a number one. So, yeah, if he doesn't play, that's a pretty big effing deal, right? Taylor Moton, that's their starting right tackle. If he doesn't play, that's a big effing deal, right? Okay? He hasn't practiced 2 days in a row with the elbow. Elbows are tricky because they could throw a brace on it and he can get out there despite not practicing all week. So that's something to keep an eye on. But if he doesn't play, that helps, right? We need all the help we can get on defense right now. A'Shawn Robinson, knee, significant defensive lineman. They're already a little light on the defensive line, so he can't go. That helps. Jordan Brooks is coming off of, he's had his window open. He started the season off on the PUP list, so he isn't going to play in this game. I'm not really too concerned about Jonathan Brooks, but he's really talented. Running back, second-round pick out of Texas. And the rest of the guys, they're probably going to play. They threw their second-year tackle, Okwonwu, on the list. That's something to pay attention to. But he was limited. It's not like he didn't practice. I expect him to play, but when you look at this list, they got a lot of injuries. They're super banged up. And if those guys that I just talked about don't play, and none of them have practiced this week to this point, they're in trouble. They were already in trouble beforehand. They're in even more trouble if those guys can't go this week. So it's looking good for the good guys right now. I won't even sugarcoat you. It's looking really good for the good guys right now from an injury standpoint. But we will see. Tomorrow we'll tell the story. We'll get more information. And if we can get Deontay Johnson and Clowney and maybe even – and Josie Jewell looks like he's not going to play. But if we can get Josie Jewell, Clowney, Deontay Johnson, and Taylor Moton not to play, it could get ugly fast for the Panthers in this game. So not that it might not have already gotten ugly no matter what, but that helps a lot. So let's get to what was said by the two coordinators today. We'll start with Kliff Kingsbury. He talked about obviously the game from Sunday first and the lack of rushing attempts. And he said, look, we went into the game knowing that they had a pretty stout rush defense, and we knew that it was going to be a challenge. And would we have liked to have run it more? Sure. Did we miss B-Rob? Absolutely. He talked about that. He said B-Rob is not only a physical presence, but he's also an emotional lift for the team. He comes with so much energy, plays with this zest for the game that is unmatched. And he's like, yeah, we missed him a lot, but we still got to, find ways to, get the run game going. That's who we are, right? And it was good to hear that because that is who we are. That is a part of our identity that we are really trying to forge right now. And I felt like we kind of got away from that a little bit. And some of it was game plan specific. Some of it was the Ravens are just really good, so they didn't want to, force the issue. And some of it also was the game kind of dictated it. Once we were down 2 scores, running the football wasn't a priority at that point. But he said, we have to run the ball. That's part of the reason why our defense was on the field. And while I was like, I get it, the offense, and I did say that was one of the keys to the game is the offense needed to possess the football, which is why I talked about, winning on first and second down to set up third downs that were manageable, which we didn't, which is why that was one of the keys, because I didn't want our defense to have to be on the field against their offense the way that it ended up being. And so while he took the blame for that, like, hey, that's on me. I got to call better plays. I got to put us in better positions to keep our defense off the field. I'm like, I can't let you take all of that blame, Kliff, because the defense had opportunities to get stops and get themselves off the field. There were multiple third and longs that they just effed up. And so while I understand you want to take the blame and you want to fall on the sword because it was one of our worst, third down performances of the season, I can't let you do that. You can have some of the blame, right? But the defense has to own their shit. They weren't good enough on third downs, and they caused themselves to have the discrepancy that was 36-24 in the time of possession game, right? So he talked about, Jaden continuing to grow and how he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league against the blitz. He was asked about that, and he said, got to give credit to the offensive line. They've done a good job of identifying the rushers and picking everybody up. And Jaden's done a great job of understanding who's the unblocked defender, if there is one, and knowing where he needs to go with the football and getting it out of his hands, and gave the receivers credit as well, tight ends as well, for either blocking, running backs as well. And the receivers, tight ends getting open and giving him somewhere to get the football too, understanding the side adjustments and where to be. So it's a collective effort, but it's also Jaden just being hyper aware of the blitz and knowing I got to get rid of it and not holding on to it and being a deer in headlights. He talked about the importance of guys stepping up. He said that the offense has been, really in sync because outside of Brian Robinson Jr., really haven't had any injuries. Knock on a little wood there. But he's like, that helps, right? And he said that guys like Jeremy McNichols stepping up has been key. Guys that have been selfless, that have, taken on their roles and been outstanding has been huge for the team. And he talked about, the connection between Terry and Jaden. And he said, look, that play that he threw to Terry for the touchdown on fourth down, that was them talking in the huddle. And I played you guys the narration of Terry. If you're a member of the mob, when we were watching the film, I played you the narration of Terry going through that play and talking about what he and Jaden talked about in the huddle and why Terry was so hyped. He said, I had to look him in his eyes after that play because he's never had that before, where he goes to a guy in the huddle and says, hey, I'm going to run this slant, but if the leverage is too far inside, if they're playing inside leverage and he's taking away the slant, I'm going to run the fade. And Jaden was going to throw the slant, and that's why he pump faked, right? And the play looked kind of funky, and then he throws the fade, and it's the most beautiful back shoulder fade I've ever seen in my life in terms of ball placement. And he said that those two are, getting on that same page, and that's a great thing for this team. And the more reps they get, the better those two will become in terms of knowing what the other is thinking. So you're seeing that. We haven't had that ever, right? We've never had that. We've never had that kind of synchronicity between receiver and quarterback. So this is fun to watch. Then he talked about the offensive tackle situation at left tackle, where they're doing the two-man rotation. And I don't think this is going to change. So at this point, I'm resigned to the fact that we're going to have this rotating left tackle situation every other possession. They're going to, have Coleman in. Coleman started this game. And I don't know if a lot of you know that, but he actually started. This is the first time Brandon Coleman had started a game. And then it had, one more snap than Cornelius Lucas. But the two are going to be rotating, I think, the remainder of the season. It sounds like they have no intentions of changing that, and that's fine. As long as it's working, I don't give a shit. So Joe Whitt Jr., I thought was excellent today. And I've seen some people compare him to Eric Bieniemy. He is not Eric Bieniemy by a long shot, because he actually, one, owns his shit. Bieniemy never owned anything. It was always somebody else's fault. That's number one. And two, he actually talks about the issues. Bieniemy would talk in circles. He wouldn't say shit. He would say a lot without saying a damn thing. cliches and a bunch of nothing, and then the same shit would happen, right? Whereas with Joe Whitt Jr., every week he said something and things have changed. Whatever the thing that was ailing us the week before, and they put an emphasis on it, they've gotten it fixed. So this week his thing was communication. And I talked about this. If you watched the film, if you're a member of the mob, we went over this, and it was really interesting to hear him talk about it, because we literally had this same conversation during our film session. Remember, I showed you the route on the third down where Isaiah, they started out in the trips, right? He talked about 3 plays. He said, we lost this game because of 4 plays. I think he said 4 plays. He said, we lost this game because of 4 plays. And he said, I don't worry about the third down penalties. That's a part of the game. Those things happen. And he's not wrong. And he said that I can live with those, right? They're going to happen. But what I can't live with are the mental mistakes and the lack of communication. He said, some of that's on me. He said 3 of them were poor communication, coverage busts that allowed them to, because remember, the thing that when we were watching the film, I said, why are guys so wide open? And so we dove into it, right? And then one, he said it was on him because the communication was incorrect. So the guy got the incorrect call, played the incorrect coverage, and that's led to the coverage being not what it needed to be and the receiver being wide open. The other 3 were good communication, and the guy just didn't get the communication, right? So, and you could tell who the culprit was every time. So I'll bring up one play in particular, because we talked about 3 plays in particular that were huge plays in the game that hurt us on third downs when we could have got off the field. And the one I want to bring up is the one we talked about the most on the film study, which was they started out in a trips, a bunch formation, right? And then they take the tight end, Isaiah Likely, who was the initial 3 on the play, right? And he, I think he was the initial, if you're going from the outside in, he's the 3 on the play, right? So at the head of the trips, the bunch was, I want to say it was Zay Flowers at the head of the trips, right? And once he went in motion, Zay Flowers became the new 3, and Bateman became the new 2, right? So let me go back for some of you. So you read the receivers 1, 2, and 3 from outside in, right? The X is the 1, and the slot is the 2, and the guy innermost, on the formation, or the closest to the line of scrimmage, or the closest to the box, to the end man on the line of scrimmage, is the 3, right? If it's 3 receivers to that side. So when they first were aligned, Bateman was 1, Zay Flowers was 2, and the tight end, Isaiah Likely, was the 3. Isaiah Likely goes in short motion to the outside, and now he becomes the new 1, right? Zay Flowers, Bateman now becomes the new 2, and Flowers is the new 3. So you have to match it as such, right? So Louie communicates that. Like, he went in motion, he's communicating, and Noah Igbenogany runs. So you see the play develop, and Zay Flowers comes across the field, and Frankie Louie matches him, right? So he got it, right? So he matches him. And for some inexplicable reason, Noah Igbenogany is shadowing Zay Flowers as if he's still the 2, and he's now the 3, right? So, no, he's shadowing as if he's still the 2. He's now the 3. And Noah had 2 responsibility. He was guarding the 2, which when the play was first set up, when they first got to the line of scrimmage, Zay Flowers was the 2. But once Isaiah Likely, who was the 3 initially, went in motion outside, became the 1, Bateman became the new 2. That became Noah Igbenogany's responsibility. But instead, he stuck with the original 2, which was Zay Flowers, which Frankie Louie already had on the play. And so nobody covered Bateman. He runs over the middle of the field. He's wide ass open. This is 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10. He's wide open over the middle of the field for a first down. And after the play, Frankie goes over like, bro, what the man? You got the 2, bro. And Noah's like, I got the 2. And he was like, no, you got the 2. You ran with the 3. He went in motion. The new 2 was Bateman. Come on, bro. You could see it on, they were kind of talking it out, but it was Noah Igbenogany. So I know the plays he's talking about. We talked about it. And he said, that can't happen. He said, I'm pissed off because we should have gave up 20 points. If we give up 20 points with the way our offense operates, that's a win. But instead we had those 4 plays, we gave up 30. I know some of the corner route to Mark Andrews. He's talking about that play, right? Well, we went over that on the film session because obviously that wasn't good. And I think that's the play where they called the wrong coverage. That's what I think that play was. But I could sit here and guess. But, it was fun listening to him because he broke a lot of that stuff down. And we talked about it on the film, study. So it's fun to see all of that stuff kind of come full circle. But he talked about having better communication, right? That's what's going to happen if we want to be successful. And he said, look, Zay Flowers just got us. He just had a day. Like, it is what it is. It happens. But he's like, the 4 plays that we gave up can't happen. We got to be better than that. And it starts with me. And so he said we banged up on the defensive line. Guys are going to have to step up. He's like, the guy that's going to have to step up the most is Johnny Newton. We're going to move him around like we do with Deron Payne. And we're going to play him at defensive end a little bit. And guys going to have to step up. He said that, Deron Payne, someone's asked, well, Deron Payne didn't have a stat in the game. Is he playing to the level that you want him to? And he was like, yeah, no, look, that's what happened in some games. But he said, we gave up runs in this game, but it wasn't because of him. And so he was asked about, are his second and third level, really the third level defenders, playing the runs on those D-gap runs on the outside? Are they playing them well? Are they feeling well? And he said, that's a good question. He said, some of them, sometimes they are, but and I pointed this out on the screen, the Zay Flowers screen on the first offensive play of the game for the Ravens. We got 2 guys on the outside. One guy was supposed to go inside, one guy was supposed to attack outside. And you got 2 guys outside. And that's how that play popped. And I pointed that out to y'all, if you remember, if you part of the mob and you saw that. So, you see the stuff on film, right? And these are easily correctable. And I said that during the film, so like, it sucks because you see that these are easily correctable mistakes, but you can't make them against teams like Baltimore and expect to win. You can get away with that against Cleveland. You can get away with that against Arizona. You can get away with that against, Cincinnati, even though we had to score 38 to get away with it. You can get away with that against some of those teams. You can't get away with that against the best teams in the league. And so they make you pay. And they did make us pay. And he talked about the run game and how, like, when we bring an extra defender down, we got to stop the run, right? Like, we can't be giving up. Like, if we play 2 deep shell, he's like, look, we know we're going to give up 4 or 5 because we got a light box. Okay, that's fine. We are assuming that we're going to give up. And if we don't, good, great. But if we give up 4 or 5, we know that's a part of doing business, of playing with a light box and playing with a 2 deep shell. But he said, what I can't allow is we giving up 12 when we got a 2 deep shell, right? Like 4 or 5, we accounted for that. We didn't account for 12. So we got to clean that shit up. So again, accountability is key. He's accountable. I know he's holding his players accountable, and I love that. And he, talked about Frankie Louvu and how his play style is exactly what we want. That's what he said. I'm not, comparing him to anybody else, but he said, we use him like we use Michael Parsons in Dallas. Like, we move this dude everywhere. We got him off the ball. We got him running with backs. We got him coming after the quarterback. We got him at the 3-tech. We got him over the ball as a 0. We got this dude everywhere, just like we did Michael Parsons in Dallas. And he plays the way we want our guys to play. And then lastly, he, talked about Deontay Johnson and his Panthers team and what they, the threats that they pose. And I don't think Deontay Johnson's going to play right now. I'm getting excited, but I don't want to get ahead of myself because he could practice tomorrow and then end up playing on Sunday. But sounds like right now it looks like he may not go. But he's like, he's a problem. What did I tell y'all yesterday? Like, Deontay Johnson is a problem, man. Like, he's a bona fide 1. He's a low-level 1, but he's a 1 nonetheless. We don't have a number 1 corner. So you don't want to see those types of receivers. And his body type is the kind that gives Benjamin St. Juice fits. Benjamin St-Juste can cover Amari Cooper. Those are the types of guys he can stay with. Even though he's a number one, Benjamin St-Juste has no issues. That's why Amari Cooper was not a massive problem in that game. The guys that are going to give us trouble are the guys like Zay Flowers and Deontay Johnson, those smaller, faster, quicker, jitterbug type receivers who can separate. If he doesn't play, that's good for us. It's really good for us. And so he said some other things. They got good guards. The run game has been exceptional here of late. Andy Dalton is a veteran, knows where to go with the football. But Deontay Johnson is the guy that has him the most worried. And for us, he might not play. That's a good thing. So anyway, I digress. Let's transition to behind enemy lines. I know you guys have seen the line already for this game. I alluded to it yesterday, but we haven't seen a line like this in favor of the Commanders. Look, man, I can't tell you the last time. You probably got to go back to like 2015, maybe, when we were rolling, maybe 2016, when we were rolling offensively and we maybe had a bad team we were playing against. I can't remember the last time we were 9-point favorites in a ball game. I can't. I don't know. I would love for somebody to tell me. Look that up. If somebody's out there and you got some time on your hands, tell me the last time Washington was almost a double-digit point favorite in a game. Like, this shit is crazy, right? And here's the even crazier part. I expect to cover this number, okay? I expect to win by 2 scores in this game. So, yeah, I expect to cover this number. 9-point favorites at the crib. This is wild. But we got to get some get back. The last time these boys came to the crib, it was a very similar spot. We played them at 405 at home. And that was the Curtis Samuel game. Came in. That was the final game of Dwayne Haskins in Washington. He wet the bed. He was cut thereafter. Curtis Samuel had himself a day. And we signed him the next year. And they came in there and they beat us like 20-15 or something like that. Jumped on us. I want to say the score was maybe 20-0. Heineke got in there. We came roaring back, but it was too little too late. Anyway, I'm looking forward to this game because, again, I had a list before the season started, and they were on it. So this is a get-back game. And let's go behind enemy lines before we look at what Carolina brings to the table. We got to compare and contrast. Let's look at what the good guys are up to after last week's game against Baltimore. 6 weeks in, these are the numbers for your Washington Commanders. 5th in total offense, 378 yards per game. So obviously that went down after last week's performance. Same with scoring offense. We were the number 1 team. We were averaging up over 31 points a game going into last week's contest versus Baltimore. You scored 23. That number comes down to less than 30 at 29.7. And the Ravens flip-flop with us. They take the number 1 title of scoring offense, and we are now number 2. Passing offense, 13th in the league at 220 yards per game. Sacks allowed, tied for 16th, so middle of the pack with 15 on the season. Rush offense, still a top 5 rush offense despite the lackluster performance against Baltimore, 153 or 157 yards per game. Third down offense, we were first in the league at over 51% going into last week's game. Obviously, you go 4 of 11. That changes things. We're now second in the league on third down with 48.6% efficiency. Total defense, 22nd in the league. We're right around where we were last week. I think we were 21st last week. 354 yards per game. Scoring defense, 22nd in the league, giving up 24.4 points per game. Pass defense, 19th in the league, giving up 216.3 yards per game. Sacks, tied for 10th. So we're slowly but surely creeping up, right? We started out at the bottom of the barrel. 4 weeks ago, we were the worst team in the league getting to the quarterback. And then the Arizona game happened. Then the Cleveland game happened. Then the Baltimore game happened where we got to Lamar a couple of times. And now all of a sudden, we're now tied for 10th at 17th in the league in total sacks. Rush defense, 22nd at 137 yards per game. Third down defense, we regressed a bit. We had moved on up like the Jeffersons all the way to 22nd last week at like 39% or something. We were rating that league average. We were feeling good about ourselves. And then just when we thought we were safe, 6 of 10, the Ravens went 60%. We go all the way back up to 46.1% on third downs, which is good for third worst in the league, or fourth worst, 29th overall. Time of possession, we went all the way from a top 5 time of possession team, I knew this was going to happen, to 13th in the league at 30.5, 30 minutes and 54 seconds time of possession. We only kept it for 24 minutes, right? That is not who we've been, and so we had to pay for it. And then turnover differential, we finally got back over in the plus side of things. We went back to even last week because we had been +1 for a couple of weeks. And then we had 2 turnovers, only got 1 against Cleveland. So we were back to 0, got 1 and didn't give it up. Now we're back to +1. At some point, we got to try to push that thing up. Somebody brought it up. I want to say it was Mr. Ron B, I think. But somebody said we got to push this turnover thing up. I agree. We got to do it, man. I think this is the week to try and do that, right? So now let's get to Carolina and what they bring to the table. And so they're 25th in total offense, just a shade under 300 yards a game. Scoring offense, 28th in the league. And again, this number is misleading because you're factoring in the first 2 weeks with Bryce Young where they pretty much didn't score at all. And so after that, they've been scoring the football a lot more effectively. They scored 36 versus the Raiders. They scored 24 against Cincinnati. They scored 20 last week. So they've been a better offense. The one game that Andy Dalton has started, which was the Bears game, that they didn't score effectively. And so for the most part, they're scoring over 20 points a game with Andy Dalton in the lineup. But still, they're not approaching 30, right? Passing offense, 23rd in the league, 187 yards. Again, you got to factor in the Bryce Young effect of the first 2 weeks. So that obviously drugged their pass yards down significantly. Sacks allowed, 11th, tied for 11th with only 12 because Andy Dalton gets rid of the football. He's not going to stand back there and let you get to him. The ball comes out on time. So that's not something that I expect us to have a field day with like we did against, Deshaun Watson. Rush offense, 22nd in the league at 111 yards per game. They've gotten significantly better on the ground here over the last month. Chuba Hubbard has been very effective. Had a long run against Cincinnati, a long run for a touchdown to get the scoring kicked off in the Chicago game. Had a couple of nice hits versus Atlanta last week. And he's been really good. He's been probably the most steady player on their roster. And so they feel confident that they can run the football. We're going to have to stop the run and force Andy Dalton to beat us if we want to not only win, but win comfortably. Third down offense, they are converting at a 31% clip, which gets them to 26th in the league. And that's a real problem. That ain't just a Bryce Young first 2 weeks of the season. They struggle on third downs. Because they're not good on first and second downs a lot of times. They get into these third and long situations and they can't convert. So if you can stop Chuba Hubbard on 1st and 10 for a 1 yard run, and then they try to go to the run again on 2nd and 9 and they get 1 yard, now it's 3rd and 8. And that's how you can get off the field. But we got the Ravens to 3rd and long several times last week and weren't able to get off the field. So again, we don't have a great third down defense. We got the 29th rated third down defense. They got the 26th. Something's got to give, right? Either they're going to get better on third downs at the expense of our defense, or we're going to get better at the expense of their offense. The last time we were put into this situation, we got better at the expense of a really bad third down offense in Cleveland. So total defense, they're 29th. They're giving up 380 yards a game. And again, their defense is not good. That is the weakness of their team right now. You can move the football. You can score points. They're hurting on defense. They're not super talented before all the injuries, but you take away a Derek Brown who's out for the season. You take away a Jadeveon Clowney. You take away a Josie Jewell, and they're hurting. They're hurting, man, on defense. They're hurting. Scoring defense, they're 32nd in the league. They're dead last in points allowed. They're giving up 34 points a game. That's right up our alley. That means we need to light the scoreboard up. That's why Vegas has us as a 9-point favorite right there. Because they're looking at their inability to stop teams from lighting up the scoreboard and saying, well, Washington's doing it at one of the highest clips in the league right now. they should be able to score 35, 38, maybe even a 40 burger. I'd love to taste a 40 burger this week. Haven't had that taste since week 4. Love to get a bite of a 40 burger. Pass defense, they're 23rd in the league at 226.3 yards per game. Sacks, they're almost dead last at 31st in the league. They only got 6 sacks. So part of the reason why they struggled on defense, they can't get to the quarterback, right? They don't stop the run well, which we're getting to next, and they don't sack the quarterback. So what the hell do you do? Nothing, which is why we need to take advantage of it, right? Rush defense, the 30th in the league, giving up 153.5 yards a game. So they're almost dead last in sacks, almost dead last in rush defense. Again, got to take advantage of them. And dead last in scoring defense. You see where this is going, right? Time of possession, they're 27th in the league. Again, if you can't get off the field on third downs because you can't get to the quarterback because you can't stop the run, then you can't possess the football. So, again, they struggle at time of possession, 28 minutes per game. And then turnover differential, they're -4. All right, -4 in the turnover differential. Again, some of that probably came from the first 2 weeks with Bryce Young, but they're also not generating a ton of turnovers themselves. So, this would be a week where you just take care of the football. That's what we do. We take care of the ball. Do it again this week. See if you can't create a turnover or 2. Dalton's been known to give you a chance. He threw a couple of picks last week against Atlanta. One of them was really bad. Let's see if we can't, we have 1 interception. Joe Whitt Jr. said, look, man, I know we got our first interception. He said 6 games, 1 interception. Bro, I don't do this. I don't do this. This is not who I've been. So I'm not happy. Well, this is an opportunity maybe to get you 1 or 2 more added to the ledger, right? So we'll see. Anyway, that is a behind enemy lines. You see what we're up against. You see what it is. You see what we can and should be able to do in this game. Now it's all about going out and executing. And I got no doubt in my mind whatsoever that this team, this group is going to be prepared to go out and do what they need to do to make this game non-competitive sooner rather than later. Right, I'm looking to get rid of these boys somewhere in the second quarter. I want to be up 3 scores by halftime, 24-7. Right, and by the time you come out, hopefully we win the toss, get the ball to start the second half, and go down and put them out of their misery. Sort of like what we did with Cleveland. Right, that's kind of the kind of energy that I really want to have. Is I want this thing to be pretty much over at halftime. Come out in the third quarter, put our foot on their necks, and crush their larynx, and have this thing over by. I would really like it if we could sit some of our guys in the fourth quarter because we got a big one the week after. But one at a time. Let's take care of this Panthers team. I ain't looking past them. I'm looking right at them. Let's do these boys like we supposed to. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T here on Commanders Nightly News. I look forward to chopping up with you tomorrow. We would go through our keys to the game and how we can get it done. We'll also talk once more about Darryl Green and his ceremony. That's going to be awesome. In addition to a number of other topics. So if you're a Commanders fan, I'll see you then. If you're an NFL fan, hopefully I'll see you tonight. Thursday Night Football, Saints, Broncos will be live after that game. Until next time, I'm your man Louie T signing off. You guys have a good one. Take care.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap, and to Riggins. Good hole. He's got